November 2021. Zapopan, Jalisco. A major retail supercenter's parking area transforms into the site of a brazen abduction, sparking a massive global pursuit. Two elite Mexican naval operatives, highly trained tactical personnel, are grabbed right off the streets in broad daylight. The masterminds pulling the strings, a 20-year-old woman and her syndicate enforcer husband, carrying out a frantic scheme to liberate her mother from federal lockup by using human bargaining chips. That woman is Laisha Michelle Oseguera González, the offspring of the most feared underworld emperor on the planet. Jump ahead to February 22nd, 2026. Tapalpa, Jalisco. Elite forces neutralize Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes during a tactical strike, abruptly ending the brutal reign of the massive shadow organization's founding patriarch. Yet, at his memorial, cameras catch glimpses of a young woman mourning in the shadows. Laisha actually returned to Mexico, even with an active warrant for that brazen snatching hanging over her head, ignoring the immense danger, and turning her back on an American passport that could have easily shielded her safely in California, where she had been hiding out in a $1.2 million estate alongside her fugitive spouse. But here is exactly why her dark tale stands apart from every other underworld heiress. She is the singular family member who walked away without a scratch. Her brother, El Menchito, is locked away forever in an American federal facility. Her sister Jessica spent 30 months behind bars for washing dirty funds. Her husband, El Gaucho, recently caught a sentence of 11 years and 8 months. Her father was ultimately eliminated by armed forces. Her mother did hard time for managing the shadow organization's massive cash flow. Yet Laisha remains entirely untouched by the American justice system. Authorities down south desperately want her for taking those hostages. But as a recognized citizen allegedly hiding out somewhere in California, reportedly operating a quiet little coffee business, she seamlessly vanishes into suburban normalcy as if the terrifying empire that raised her was just a myth. Born stateside, navigating two entirely different realities, learning the family's dark trade from a terrifyingly young age, tangled up in brutal underground activities by her early 20s, yet somehow breathing free air while her entire circle crumbles to dust. This is the chilling account of how the youngest child of a notorious kingpin morphed into the ultimate phantom of an illicit dynasty. By the time we finish, you will grasp precisely how she orchestrated an escape that absolutely no one else in her bloodline could manage, keeping her liberty entirely intact while her father's empire burned to ashes all around her. Before diving into how Laisha ended up masterminding hostage trades and leading a shadowy double existence, we absolutely must uncover the true nature of the González Oseguera bloodline, because this is far from just another street-level dealer's kid. This is underworld royalty. Two terrifyingly powerful dynasties fused into one single family tree. Her father, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, engineered a specific Jalisco-based syndicate into the absolute most ruthless, shadowy organization in the country. We are talking about a kingpin possessing military-grade rocket launchers, 50 caliber heavy artillery, and his incredibly loyal personal tactical squads. A phantom who literally swatted government helicopters out of the sky, a target carrying a staggering $10 million bounty issued directly by the State Department. When he was finally neutralized in February 2026, the syndicate unleashed pure chaos. 250 flaming blockades paralyzed 20 separate states, vehicles were reduced to ash, and 25 national defenders perished in brutal payback. That is the sheer, terrifying magnitude of influence her father commanded. Then there is her mother, Rosalinda González Valencia, notoriously known as the Absolute Boss. Hailing straight from the powerful family faction that initially established the financial backbone of the syndicate, Rosalinda single-handedly directed more than 70 front companies designed solely for washing dirty capital, successfully scrubbing over $50 million between 2015 and 2016 alone. She was never just a silent partner to a kingpin. She operated as the undisputed chief financial officer of a billion-dollar illegal juggernaut. This is the exact environment Laisha inherited. No crushing poverty, no desperate survival, no classic rags-to-riches underworld myth. She was baptized in extreme wealth, terrifying authority, and brutal ruthlessness from the very second she took her first breath. Yet, unlike her older siblings, who plunged recklessly into the abyss and paid a catastrophic price, Laisha figured out how to glide seamlessly between two completely opposite realms, playing the untouchable syndicate princess down south and the lawful resident up in California without ever letting either identity trap her in a cage. That brazen abduction in 2021, the sprawling riverside estate, the quiet cafe alibi, her sudden materialization at her father's burial. Absolutely, none of this puzzle fits together until you realize that Laisha embodies a terrifyingly modern evolution within the criminal hierarchy. She belongs to the inaugural generation that finally weaponized their birthright as the absolute perfect get-out-of-jail-free card. She mastered the art of pulling the strings in family operations while hiding behind an impenetrable wall of plausible deniability. She knew exactly how to stay visible enough to command loyalty, yet remain practically invisible to federal prosecutors. And the most chilling part, she is still out there breathing free air, leaving everyone wondering exactly how long this phantom can keep outrunning karma before the clock finally hits zero. Early beginnings, straddling two distinct realities. Chapters 3 to 7. Let us rewind the tapes back to 2001. Somewhere deep in California, the precise hospital remains a tightly guarded secret, but intelligence firmly confirms her arrival on American soil. Laisha Michelle Oseguera González took her first breath as a legally documented citizen, not by sheer coincidence, but through her family's cold, calculated foresight, because even in those early days, long before their massive illicit empire was ever truly formed, well before her father transformed into the most intensely hunted phantom on the map, her bloodline already recognized that an American passport was the ultimate insurance policy. Her youngest years remain buried under heavy layers of shadow. However, here is what we can construct by crossing family lore with syndicate records. Her notorious father had previously navigated life within the American borders. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, he actually found himself in handcuffs in San Francisco back in 1986 at just 19 years old. Busted for hoarding stolen goods and packing a loaded weapon, he set up shop in the Bay Area, quickly sinking his teeth into the underground scene by brewing illegal synthetics out in Redwood City. Law enforcement caught him pushing contraband in 1989, leading to his exile. But he crept back over the border only to be slapped with heavy federal trafficking indictments in Sacramento by 1992. Following that 1992 takedown, the authorities threw him out, banishing him south of the border permanently. Stepping foot on American soil meant instant federal prison time for him. However, fate had a twisted, darker plan. In 1996, he tied the knot with Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, intertwining his destiny with a bloodline whose dark roots dug deep across both nations. Her kin were masters of the shadows. They knew exactly how to shuffle dirty cash, prop up fake corporate storefronts in the States, and keep their shadowy operations thriving across the divide. The Gonzalez Valencia clan were not merely well-connected street hustlers. They were practically royalty within the criminal underworld. Starting out as simple avocado farmers in the Mexican countryside, her family pivoted in the 1970s to harvesting highly lucrative, forbidden cash crops. Long before she exchanged vows with the exiled kingpin, her brothers had already forged a notorious syndicate of their own. This crew evolved into the financial heartbeat of a monstrous future empire. Her sibling, notoriously known as the mastermind of the bunch, possessed a terrifying genius for exploiting global banking systems. He manipulated ghost corporations and washed illicit fortunes on a massive scale that other underworld organizations could only dream of pulling off. This vast network of siblings, a truly sprawling and ruthless family tree, held immense, terrifying power. They commanded billions of dollars in hidden wealth, effortlessly operating fully legitimate companies spread across several different nations. Sitting on hidden vaults in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and various offshore havens. They recognized that ultimate underworld supremacy wasn't merely about moving street products. True dominance meant sanitizing the tainted profits afterward, sinking those massive funds into untouchable, legal, corporate structures. They built an impenetrable fortress of wealth that law enforcement could never seize. Over the years, the authorities have managed to capture several of the brothers. One prominent sibling was dragged out of Brazil and handed over to the States to face justice for smuggling immense quantities of white powder. The primary treasury boss was thrown behind bars in 2016, although the system ultimately spat him back out onto the streets. Two other brothers were up to their necks in the syndicate's daily grind, while even the sisters drew heavy suspicion for scrubbing dirty funds through their corporate portfolios. Consequently, that 1996 marriage between the exiled hustler and his bride was far more than a simple romance. It was a dark, calculated corporate merger. He delivered the ruthless brute force, tactical terror, and the logistical genius to move illicit cargo. In return, her bloodline supplied the endless cash flow, the invisible financial architecture, and a web of powerful global allies. Their unholy alliance laid the absolute groundwork for their terrifying empire's rise to supremacy, passing a lethal dual legacy to their offspring. Arriving in this world around 2001, the youngest daughter stepped right into the third generation of an incredibly dangerous, shadowy dynasty. Her older brother entered the picture in San Francisco back in 1990, blessing him with an invaluable American passport. The middle sister's origins remained cloaked in secrecy, yet heavily tied to California soil, revealing the family's chillingly calculated master plan. Ensure the offspring secure stateside citizenship, mold their minds with the syndicate's ruthless ideologies, and grant them the perfect camouflage to slip seamlessly between both realms. However, holding the title of the baby in an underworld empire profoundly twisted the youngest daughter's ultimate destiny. As the firstborn son, her brother was instantly crowned the undisputed prince of the dark organization. He spent his youth being molded to command the entire operation, while the middle sister shadowed their mother, learning the dark art of managing the hidden treasuries. Yet, the youngest sibling, the absolute baby of this terrifying household, faced an entirely unique set of chilling expectations and unholy privileges. Her childhood was deeply fractured between life in the States and her roots down south, while her father was forging a new, monstrous empire from the ashes of old rival syndicates in the mid-2000s, drowning regions in brutal turf wars against vicious competitors. The household quietly kept their luxurious hideouts and ghost operations running smoothly out in California. This dual-life tactic was standard play for kingpins, but the profoundly sinister way they weaponized their own bloodline was highly abnormal. The eldest boy was relentlessly sharpened to seize the throne, mastering the brutal mechanics of their shadowy enterprise. He studied terror tactics, iron-fisted leadership, and supply chain manipulation, eventually acting as the primary lieutenant directing global contraband routes and managing a small army of enforcers. Meanwhile, the middle sister was quietly pulled into the realm of financial alchemy, mirroring her mother's deceptive talents. She was taught exactly how to pull the strings of seemingly legitimate companies, from coastal sushi spots to mountain resorts, the very facades that brilliantly scrubbed the syndicate's bloody profits clean. But then there was the youngest. Within the deeply entrenched hierarchies of underworld dynasties, the baby often walks a completely unconventional, shadowed road. She wasn't destined for the blood-soaked throne like her brother, nor was she chained to the ledgers like her older sister. She possessed an arguably deadlier arsenal, a pristine stateside passport, the innocence of youth, and the ghost-like ability to operate completely under the radar. Throughout her formative years, she watched her mother orchestrate a vast, invisible corporate behemoth with terrifying precision. She observed an empire of 70 different ventures, spanning from medical care and luxury travel to storefronts and massive real estate portfolios. Farming ventures. Growing up, the young heiress witnessed the art of washing dirty capital, observing how illicit syndicate profits were seamlessly transformed into clean revenue via local diners, building firms, and sprawling crop fields. She observed the sheer magnitude of her patriarch's influence firsthand, noticing the absolute terror and quiet reverence he commanded from everyone around him, and how massive territories across Jalisco functioned entirely under the organization's iron grip. She grew accustomed to the tactical vehicle fleets, the hidden compounds, and the relentless relocation required to stay one step ahead of the law. From her earliest days, It was clear her household was far from ordinary. Realizing their immense fortune was deeply rooted in a ruthless underworld, with task forces across two nations actively hunting their empire, yet she equally navigated the privileges of life within the United States. Having an American passport granted her unparalleled mobility, allowing her to slip past immigration checkpoints without raising a single red flag. She enjoyed the safety net of constitutional shields, fully aware that whenever the southern territories became too unstable, vanishing into California remained a viable escape route. Heading into her adolescence throughout the late 2000s and 2010s, she resided mostly south of the border while her family's syndicate aggressively expanded its shadow dominion. The patriarch, widely known as El Mencho, had evolved into one of the globe's most fiercely pursued fugitives. Her sibling, Menchito, faced multiple captures beginning in 2015, bouncing between freedom and a holding cell while battling international handover to U.S. courts. Meanwhile, her sister, Jessica, orchestrated the empire's financial cleaning schemes via corporate fronts. As for Laisha, she masterfully remained in the shadows. Unlike the typical underworld heirs flaunting exotic vehicles and diamonds all over social media, or her brother who visibly directed brutal tactical strikes, she avoided the spotlight completely. She spent her time absorbing the family trade, and maintaining a ghost-like presence. But as the calendar hit 2020 into 2021, a dark shift occurred, stepping into her young adulthood, hovering around her late teens to early 20s. She entangled herself with Christian Fernando Gutierrez Ochoa, infamously dubbed El Gaucho. This exact moment marks her terrifying evolution from a sheltered syndicate princess into a ruthless architect of underworld operations, a formidable union binding two massive underworld bloodlines together from 7 until 1030. The narrative takes a deeply complex turn here, as her bond with El Gaucho was never a simple love story. It functioned as a calculated merger between two dominant factions within the Jalisco network, a cold, strategic pact. Born in 1987, Christian Fernando Gutierrez Ochoa was roughly 14 to 15 years her senior. Such vast age differences are incredibly standard within syndicate traditions, where matrimonial alliances are used as tactical tools to cement familial loyalty. Yet, El Gaucho was far from an average street-level enforcer. He possessed an elite underworld pedigree of his own. His father, José Luis Gutiérrez Valencia, infamously known as Don Cello, stood as a highly experienced syndicate smuggler who had collaborated alongside the top boss for decades. Don Cello held legendary status within the network for two distinct reasons initially: his brilliant logistical mind for moving illicit cargo. Secondly, his spectacularly reckless existence perfectly encapsulated the terrifying arrogance and bottomless indulgence of syndicate supremacy. Back in 2013, Don Cello hosted an outrageous bash straight from the confines of Puente Grande, the fortified penitentiary housing him. This was no modest gathering, it was a full-blown underworld gala featuring live music, endless liquor, and the kingpin boldly declaring to the crowd, "I am the supreme authority in this place." Footage from this wild event inevitably surfaced, triggering a global uproar while exposing just how deeply the syndicates had infected the national penal system. Upon his liberation in November 2017, law enforcement swiftly raided and confiscated his sprawling estate. The discoveries inside painted a vivid portrait of criminal extravagance: gilded handguns etched with patron saints, luxury Italian sports car insignias, high-end designer branding, a live Bengal tiger, and rare tropical birds. This extravagant chaos was the exact environment that molded El Gaucho, though his father's taste of liberty was remarkably brief. Barely 10 days post-release, on the 4th of December 2017, naval forces cornered him, leading to a fatal tactical exchange that ended his reign permanently. El Gaucho's patriarch met a brutal end amid a storm of crossfire, leaving Christian to inherit not only his rank within the organization but also a burning, deeply personal vendetta against state authorities. From this point, the ancestral ties weave an even darker web. El Gaucho's sister was already wed to Menchito, Laisha's sibling. Therefore, this new romantic pairing meant the top boss's daughter was tying the knot with Don Cello's heir. The apex leader's son was already united with Don Cello's daughter. Two of the absolute most dominant factions within the organization became entirely fused together. There was nothing coincidental about this. It was pure, calculated empire construction. This union was a strict guarantee that immense wealth, lethal influence, and logistical command remained safely locked away behind an impenetrable wall of DNA. El Gaucho initially integrated into the family business back in 2014 at merely 17 years old. Immediately following his father's incarceration, by the era he officially aligned with Laisha, spanning 2020 to 2021, he was a heavily relied upon lieutenant. Federal attorneys note that between 2014 and 2023, El Gaucho individually managed the logistics and dispersion of 40,000 kilograms of crystal product and 2,000 kilograms of white powder flowing across the southern border. To put that in perspective, that equates to 88,000 pounds of crystal and 4,400 pounds of the white stuff. However, his true genius extended far beyond moving contraband. He was an absolute master of financial camouflage. Operating as a shadow accountant, he manipulated property deals, ghost corporations, and cross-border wire transfers to thoroughly sanitize the illicit revenue streams. He was incredibly refined and meticulous, cementing himself according to federal intelligence dossiers as one of the ultimate kingpin's most fiercely protected confidants. The bond between Laisha and El Gaucho intensified heavily during this dark chapter, linking a young woman barely out of adolescence to a hardened operative navigating his mid-30s, deeply rooted within the syndicate, swimming in illicit wealth from their underground operations, and bound to her bloodline by countless unbreakable threads. Call it dark romance, cold calculation, or a twisted blend of the two. Their bond cemented a terrifying pact between two powerhouses. Then came November 2021. Their connection faced an incredibly brutal trial when they crossed a line that permanently shattered their reality. The forced vanishing. November 2021. Den 30 to 500. On the 15th of November 2021, state forces apprehended Rosalinda González Valencia, Laisha's mother, for washing illicit funds. Yet, for the daughter, this was no ordinary maternal figure being locked away. This was the supreme financial architect of the notorious organization, the mastermind juggling $50 million in shadow accounts, the ruling matriarch of the dynasty, suddenly caged by the state. Based on the sequence of events stitched together by detectives, mere hours after Rosalinda was taken, Laisha and El Gaucho hatched a dark scheme, a frantic, terrifying strategy, revealing just how hopelessly tangled Laisha was in the syndicate's shadowy underworld, proving she would effortlessly cross boundaries the average person fears to even think about. The blueprint was chillingly basic on paper, yet utterly unhinged to actually pull off. Snatch armed forces operatives and swap them to buy back Rosalinda's freedom. Back the state into a corner using human leverage. It is the sort of logic that only clicks if you were raised in a nightmare realm where brutality buys power and breathing souls are just bargaining tokens. On the 15th of November 2021, the exact same day the matriarch was apprehended, Laisha, El Gaucho, and a crew of syndicate enforcers set their sights on two naval members. The staging ground, a mundane store parking area in Zapopan, Jalisco, a crowded space in broad daylight, yet deep inside the organization's stronghold, a zone where this underground empire moves with bone-chilling audacity. The two service members, one man, one woman, were forcibly taken. Elite state defenders conditioned for battle, completely ambushed in a perfectly synchronized strike. This was far from your average petty street crime. It was a heavily calculated, tactical vanishing act pulled off by ruthless professionals. For 4 agonizing days, those two sailors remained captive. 4 endless days where their loved ones suffered in the dark, clueless if they were even still breathing. 4 entire days of the state desperately hunting for them, all while the organization laid down their grim ultimatum: let Rosalinda walk, or the captives will be permanently erased. The naval fleet unleashed an enormous manhunt. They were well aware the syndicate held their own. They understood the deadly risk. Yet tracking them down inside the Empire's own backyard, where the Shadow Network has eyes and ears on every single corner, where any random passerby might be secretly feeding info to the bosses, and invisible bunkers pepper the landscape. It felt like hunting for a ghost inside a maze of pure malice and rot. The 19th of November 2021, 4 days following the violent disappearance, officials caught a whispered tip pointing to a spot in Puerto Vallarta. Upon breaching the perimeter, they discovered both service personnel still breathing, forced to their knees by the pavement. The female operative was physically whole, deeply rattled, and psychologically scarred, but surviving without severe bodily trauma. The male counterpart fared far worse. He had endured brutal physical torment while held in the dark. The underlying threat was unmistakable. The syndicate could have easily taken his life, yet they opted to rough him up and let him walk a twisted display, proving they held absolute dominance but were open to talking. However, there was a catch. The sinister scheme collapsed entirely. Rosalinda stayed locked up. State forces flatly refused to bargain with underground empires in such scenarios, especially when it comes to top-tier prizes like her. Setting her free would have broadcasted that taking people against their will is an effective tactic, proving the syndicate could bend the state to its will using sheer terror. Thus, Rosalinda remained behind bars. The operatives were rescued, and Laisha, along with her partner, morphed into hunted fugitives for the forced disappearance of state defenders. It is among the gravest offenses imaginable in the nation, carrying the terrifying weight of a lifelong sentence. State agents triggered an immediate and aggressive probe. They possessed absolute certainty that the shadow organization was pulling the strings. Detectives held classified intel directly linking the associates' involvement. However, pinning down hard proof of Laisha's hands-on role proved far trickier. She was never actually standing at the scene of the snatching. Whispers from the underground suggested she was the puppet master, handling the grim logistics and invisible choreography from afar. Still, relentless, state prosecutors constructed a damning case regardless. Capture orders dropped for the dangerous duo. If cornered within the country, they would stare down decades locked in a cage for making armed forces vanish. This specific transgression is treated with lethal seriousness by the establishment, as it represents a direct strike against the nation's supreme power. For Laisha, this was the exact second the ground shifted forever. She mutated from a pampered syndicate heiress into an aggressive, frontline outlaw. She stepped over the threshold, evolving from a quiet spectator of the family's dark empire to a prime architect of its brutality. Suddenly, she was a high-value target, terrified of spending her remaining days in a cell if tracked down. Her accomplice was in even deeper waters. He was an identified syndicate enforcer with heavy contraband distribution charges already hanging over him. The high-profile Vanishing Act simply poured gasoline on his existing legal inferno. Stepping out into the light anywhere in the country meant risking a state raid or facing lethal retaliation from enemy factions. Therefore, they pulled the classic move used by underworld royalty when the pressure becomes unbearable. They vanished. Yet, this was not simply fleeing to a neighboring territory or disappearing into the deep ridges of Jalisco. The target was heading steadily north, slipping quietly past the boundary, and fading without a trace into the United States. That was the exact moment Laisha's American passport became her ultimate weapon. The staged demise and California Vanishing Act occurred between 1500 and 1900 hours, December 2023. Roughly 2 years following that high-profile abduction, El Gaucho sat firmly at the top of Mexico's most heavily pursued fugitive list. Federal agents held massive dossiers on him, while local authorities scoured the country relentlessly to track him down. Opposing syndicate members would have eliminated him instantly. He had to erase his existence entirely. Suddenly, underworld rumors flared the top boss had permanently silenced El Gaucho over a lie. Based on whispers from confidential insiders who eventually brought this crucial intel straight to American investigators, the kingpin openly bragged about eliminating his own son-in-law. That dark narrative ripped through the syndicate hierarchy, bled into rival factions, and completely fooled national intelligence bureaus. The entire criminal underworld bought the illusion that El Gaucho was gone, allegedly taken out by family over some massive betrayal or failure. Yet, it was all smoke and mirrors. a masterfully crafted deception designed by the boss himself to carve out a clean and untraceable getaway for the young couple. The dark truth: the fugitive was breathing fine, sneaking beneath the earth into American soil via a clandestine syndicate passageway near Tijuana. We are definitely not talking about some basic dirt trenches here. These underground marvels feature advanced ventilation, full lighting setups, and custom rail lines built specifically for quietly transporting high-value contraband. Only now, the precious cargo was the Phantom himself, riding smoothly toward California, while the rest of the world pictured him buried permanently in the Jalisco dirt. He made the crossing wrapped in a fabricated persona, far beyond an assumed name. This was a totally engineered background supported by flawless ghost paperwork. By September 2023, leaning fully into this shadow profile, he scored a legitimate California driving permit claiming to be Luis Miguel Martinez, featuring a completely invented government identifier. Luis Miguel Martinez, a phantom citizen assembled entirely from scratch. For well over 12 months, the fugitive fully embodied this shadow identity. But the upcoming twist pushes this tale straight into pure madness. Laisha was already waiting in the Golden State. Holding full American citizenship meant she bypassed customs without raising any alarms. No shadowy subterranean routes were required on her end, just a legitimate passport and a casual checkpoint stroll. While he played dead down south, she built their pristine new Southern California sanctuary, and they certainly were not laying low in some crumbling, off-the-grid studio apartment just to avoid drawing attention. They dropped $1.2 million on an absolute fortress right in the heart of Riverside, California. Riverside, the story of Laisha Michelle Oseguera González is a powerful reminder that where you come from does not have to determine where you end up. She was born into a world of immense wealth, influence, and fear, a world built on violence, secrecy, and power. To many on the outside, that life might look glamorous, but behind the luxury homes, powerful connections, and untouchable reputation lies a harsh truth. A life surrounded by crime eventually destroys everything it touches. One by one, the people closest to her paid the price. Her brother lost his freedom forever. Her father lost his life in a violent confrontation. Her husband now faces years behind bars. The empire that once looked unstoppable slowly collapsed, leaving behind broken families and shattered futures. This story teaches an important lesson for everyone, especially young people. Power without responsibility leads to ruin. Wealth gained through harm and fear never brings lasting peace. The choices we make, no matter our background, shape the direction of our lives. True strength is not about controlling others or living above the law. It is about choosing integrity, education, and purpose, even when easier. Darker paths exist. In the end, real success is not measured by power or money, but by the lives we protect, the communities we strengthen, and the legacy of honesty we leave behind.